Hey, what is going on, everybody? It is Rob, aka the Diligent Dev, and welcome to part 2 of our Ionic Cocktail app using Vue.js. Now, in part 1, we implemented a random cocktail tab, and I'll leave a link to that in the video description below. And in this part, we're going to be implementing search by ingredient. So let's go ahead and jump over to the computer and get right into it. Okay, so here we are over at the computer, and I have our project all loaded up on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, I have our app running, and all I did to do that was go down to the terminal and run Ionic serve. Now, since we want to start working on this second tab for the search by ingredient, I want to change the tab icon and also the tab name. So what I'm going to do is head to SRC, Views, and Tabs. And down here at the bottom, we see our imports for our icon. And what we're going to go ahead and do is get rid of the circle or ellipsis and replace it with pint. And then we're going to come up here. We're going to find that. We're going to say pint. And then I'm going to change tab 2 in the label to by ingredient. And go ahead and save everything. And you'll see now we have a pint and by ingredient as our label. The next thing we're going to do is work on our ingredients list. So we're going to head over to tab 2. And what I'm going to do is get rid of this Explorer container. We're also going to get rid of the import and the component registration. And then up here at the top of the script tag, we're going to import some things. So we're going to import reactive from Vue so we can set up our states. We're also going to import Axios from Axios so we can make our Ajax call. And then actually above here, we're going to import use router from Vue router, because we're going to be using the router in our template to navigate to the next page when someone clicks on an ingredient. Underneath our imports, we're going to declare an interface. And this is not something I did in the last video, and it's something I should have done, but after we're all completely done with our app, we're going to go through a refactor video and refactor a lot of the logic, so don't worry about that. But we're going to create an interface for our API. So we're going to call it ingredient. And we're going to say str ingredient 1 and set that to a string. Next, down in our export default, we'll do our setup function. The first thing we're going to do is get access to the router. So we're going to say const router equals use router. And then we'll set up our state. So we'll say const states equals reactive. And we're going to pass in an object, and we'll do lst ingredients, and we're going to set that equal to an array, and we're going to make it as ingredient array. And then we're going to do loading for our loader and set that to false. Next, we're going to create our method to grab our ingredients. So I'm going to say const fetch ingredients. We're going to set this equal to an async function. I'm going to say state.loading or loader. Actually, we're going to change this to loading. State.loading equals true. Const res equals axios.get. We'll head over to the TheCocktailDB API, and we see to fetch a list of ingredients, we're going to choose this one right here. It has an I in it. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And we're going to go ahead and paste that right in here. I'll scroll up a little bit so we can see better. And we'll say if res.data state.lst ingredients equals res.data. We'll do a question mark to check to see if it's null, and then .drinks. Now, it is kind of weird that it is .drinks because we're getting ingredients, and you'll see we're getting a little red squiggly here, and that's because we have to await this Axios call. Now, our ingredients do not come back in alphabetical order, and I would like them to, so we're going to do a little sorting on this. So we'll say states.lst ingredients.sort, and we're going to pass it a function. We'll say A and B, and we're going to return a.strIngredient.localCompare b.strIngredient1. And that will go ahead and sort our array in alphabetical order. And then down here at the bottom, outside of our if statement, we're just going to set loading back to false. Now, I'd like to display an image of the ingredient beside it in the list. So if we go back here and we look, we see we get these ingredient thumbnails. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and copy this one. And you'll see that it has the ingredient name right there. And then we're going to grab the small PNG. So in order to do this, we're going to create a new method. So we'll go outside of this fetch ingredient and we'll say const ingredient image. And we're going to pass it an ingredient. And it'll be type of string. And we're going to return, we'll do a backtick for text interpolation. We're going to go ahead and copy or paste that URL in. And all we're going to need to do is replace the ingredient name. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that, put a $ and 2 brackets. And we're going to say encode URI and then pass it the ingredient. And you'll see we're getting some red squigglies, and that's because I did not set this to an arrow function. And then the last thing we need to do down here at the bottom is call our fetch ingredient. So we're going to say fetch ingredients, and then we're going to return what we need in the template. So we're going to return router, state, and ingredient image. Then we'll go up to the template. We will change the Ion title to search by ingredient. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of everything inside of this Ion content. We're going to copy the Ion content and make another one up here. I'm going to hit Alt-Shift-F to format everything. I'm going to get rid of this full screen. And what we're going to have in here is our spinner. So I'm going to say v if state.loading. We'll do a div with a class of loading center. And then we'll do our Ion spinner. And we'll give it a color equal to primary. On this Ion content, we will do a velse. We're going to do an Ion list. Inside of the Ion list, we're going to do an Ion item. And on this Ion item, we're going to do a v4. And we'll say ingredient in lst ingredients. And we'll set the key equal to ingredient dot str ingredient 1. I'm going to hit Alt-Shift-F so we can see this a little bit better. We're going to bind to the click event. And when we click on it, we're going to set this equal to an arrow function. And we're going to say router.push. We're going to do some text interpolation. I'm going to say drinks by ingredient. And we need to put a / here and then do another /. We're going to do some text interpolation. And we're going to say ingredients.str ingredient 1. And then we're going to go ahead and add a paren to close that. Inside of our Ion item, we're going to do an Ion avatar. We're going to give it a slot of start. And inside of here, we're going to do an image and bind to the source. Set that equal to ingredient image and pass ingredients.str ingredient 1. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the alt and close this. Then we're going to do an Ion label. And inside of the Ion label, we'll do an h2 and do some text interpolation to ingredient.str ingredient 1. I'm going to hit Alt-Shift-F to format everything, and then I'm going to go ahead and save. And then we'll go ahead and click on our ingredients, and we see we're not getting anything at the moment. So what I'm going to do is open up my DevTools. And after looking around at the DevTools, I figured out that on my V4 up here, instead of state.lst ingredients, I just had lst ingredients. So once I put state in front of that, you'll see that our page loaded up just fine, and we're getting all of our ingredients and the ingredient images. Now, the last thing we're going to do on this page is our loader is not centered right now. So I'm going to go back to tab 1. And we're just going to copy the style we put in here because it'll be exactly the same. So we'll head back to tab 2, we'll scroll down, and we'll just go ahead and paste that in. Now, if we scroll up to the template, you'll see that we're going to be pushing to a new page called Drinks by Ingredient, and also passing the ingredient to that page through the route. So the first thing we need to do is create that page. So we'll go to Views, we'll add a new file, and we'll call this Drinks by ingredient.view. Now this is going to be very similar to our tab 2. So what I'm actually going to do is we're going to come in here. I'm going to hit Control or Command A and see, we're going to come back to our drinks by ingredient, and we're just going to paste that in there. Then we're going to head to our router. I'm going to go to the index.ts. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this first path, and we're going to come down outside of this second path and paste that in. If we head back and look at tab 2, this is the path that we're looking at. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this first part. I'm going to head back to our router, and then we'll just go ahead and paste that in here. And then I'm just going to put a colon and ingredients. And that way we can pass it to that. Now what we're going to do is take this, we're going to copy it and paste it in there, and we're going to change this tab or this view to drinks by ingredient. So we have our path all set up, and we're pointing at the correct components. Now back in our drinks by ingredient, we will start inside of the script tag. So what we're going to need is, we'll still need reactive, we're still going to need Axios, and we're still going to use the router, but we need access to the route now. So I'm going to add use route to this. Now, when we're getting drinks by ingredient from the API, we're going to need a different interface. So I'm going to just say drink, and then we're going to replace this with strDrink. We're going to add another property and call it strDrinkThumb, and that is also a string. And then we also have idDrink, and that is also a string. Down in our export default, we will change the name of this to drink by ingredient. Actually, we'll call it drinks by ingredient. We're still going to use the router, but we're also going to need the route. So I'm going to say const route equals use route. And then we're going to grab the ingredient from the route. So we're going to say const ingredient equals route dot params dot ingredient, and that is a string, so we're going to say as string. Now our state is going to be very similar, but instead of lst ingredients, we'll say lst drinks, and we'll say as drink array. And now instead of fetching ingredients, we're going to be fetching drinks by ingredients. So we'll change this to fetch drinks by ingredient. We need to pass in an ingredient, and that will be string. If we head back over to the TheCocktailDB API, we're going to scroll up here, and it says you can search by ingredient by just passing in the ingredient at the end as a query parameter. So we're just going to go ahead and copy this, head back here and replace this URL. And then we're going to do some backticks and go ahead and replace this with ingredient. Down here, we need to change LST ingredients to LST drinks. And these will come back in alphabetical order, so there's no reason to sort them. Also, since the thumbnail is included, we do not need an extra method to grab the thumbnail. And then all we need to do is replace this so it's called when the view is loaded, and we just need to pass our ingredients to it. Now what we need to return here is we're going to return router state, and we're also going to return ingredient to the template so that we can use it in our header. So I'm going to scroll back up, and now we need to work on our template. So up here at the top, for our title, we're going to go ahead and remove this. And we're going to add ingredients and drinks. So that way we have whatever our ingredient is. Let's say vodka. It'll say vodka drinks in the title. Now inside of our toolbar, we're going to add a back button. So we're going to say Ion buttons. And then inside of our Ion buttons tag, we're going to put an Ion back button. And on our Ion buttons, we're going to give it a slot equal to start. Now, up until now, we haven't imported any of the Ionic components into our component files. And I was going to save this for the refactor video, but the Ionic back button does not work unless you import it. So we're going to go down to the bottom here, and we're just going to import a couple. We're going to say Ion buttons and Ion back button. And then now that we've imported it, we also need to register it as a component. And then we'll go back to the top here to our template. Now we do need our spinner when the state is loading, so we'll keep that. But inside of here, we're going to keep the exact same Ion list, but we need to change what we're looping through. So in our v4, we'll say drink. In state.lst drinks, and then we'll make it drink.idDrink for our key. When someone clicks on this, now what we're going to do is send them to a drink page that we have not yet created, and we're going to pass in the drink.idDrink. For our Ion avatar, we can go ahead and delete this. We don't even have this method anymore. And we can say drink.str drink thumb. And then for our label, we're just going to say drink.str drink. I'm going to go ahead and save everything. And we see now we have our loader coming. I have a debugger for when I was having an issue with the ingredients, but we see it's nice and loaded in the screen. We see all of our ingredients. And if we scroll down, let's pick a popular one. Let's say bourbon, and we click on it. We see we now get our loader. I've still got the debugger since we copy and pasted. But we see now we have all of our bourbon drinks that are in the API, and we have our nice back button that we can go back. And the next thing we're going to do is implement our actual drink page. But before we do that, let's go ahead and remove these pesky debuggers. So I'm just going to go to the blanket search, type in debugger, and we'll go here and delete that one. And we'll also delete this one. The next thing we're going to do is head back. We're going to go to our views, and we will create a new file called drink.view. And then before we put anything in here, let's just go ahead and go to the router, and we'll just copy this and we'll paste it down here. And we'll just say that the path is drink, and we will pass in an ID of the drink, and then we'll just do the drink.view. Next, we'll head back to our drink.view. We'll add a template tag. We'll also add our script tag, and we're going to do TypeScript, but the way it does it is for version 2, so we're going to go ahead and delete everything out of there. Next, we'll import a couple things. We're going to import reactive from Vue to hold our states. We'll also import use route because we're going to grab that ID we pass in, and we do that from the Vue router. And then we're going to import Axios from Axios to make our Ajax call. We're also going to be implementing an interface, and it is quite a large interface, so all I'm going to do is copy and paste it. I will leave it in the video description, and there'll also be a link to a BitBucket repo for this, but I'm going to go ahead and paste that in, and we're going to call the interface drink. You'll see that some of them are wrapped in quotations, and that's because they have a dash in them, and TypeScript is not like that inside of an interface. So I've gone ahead and wrapped those in quotes. But like I said, you can find this in the description and in the BitBucket repo linked in the description. Next, we'll set up our export default. Inside of here, we'll give it a name equal to drink. I'll scroll down a little bit. We'll also need some components. And what I'm going to do for the components is go back to tab 2. We're just going to grab these for now, go back to our drink and paste those in. And actually, we'll paste them in above the interface. We'll scroll back down. We'll copy these. And then we'll scroll back down, and I'll put these in components, hit Alt-Shift-F2 format, and it looks like I missed a comma. And then we're going to do our setup. Inside of setup, we're going to need the route, so I'm going to say const route equals use route. And then we're going to grab the drink ID out of here, so we'll say const drink ID equals routes.params.id. as string, and then we'll add our states equal to reactive and pass in an object, and we'll do drink, and we'll set that to an object as drink, and then we'll also do loading and set that to false. Next, we'll make our method, and we're going to call it const fetch drink by ID. It's going to be an async method. We'll pass in the drink ID, and that will be a string. We'll say state.loading equals true. Then we'll make our request. So const res equals axios.get. And we'll do a backtick, and we'll head back over to the TheCocktailDB API and search for drink by ID, and we see we have it right here. So I'm going to copy this, come back, we will put it in here. And then for the ID param, we're just going to do a $ and curly braces and pass in the drink ID. And it looks like I forgot to set this to an arrow function. We'll come back in, we will put a semicolon there, and we'll say if res.data, we'll set state.drink equal to res.data, we'll check for null.drinks, and we'll pull the first drink out of the array. And we see we're getting the squigglies again, so I need to await this. And the last thing we're going to do inside of our setup method, let me close this down, is got to go outside of the function. We'll call our fetch drink by ID, and we will pass it the drink ID, and then we'll return. And the only thing we're going to return is our state. And I'll go ahead and save everything. And we're getting an error, and that's because we don't have anything inside of our template tag yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put an H1 in here for now. And we'll just say drink. And I'll go ahead and save it. Now, since Ionic has lost our navigation because we've refreshed the page, we have to go back to our original page. And essentially what I want our drink page to look like is exactly what our random cocktail page looks like. So what we should do is we should export this drink card to its own component so that we can reuse it for the random drink and the drink by ingredient functionality. So to do that, let's head over to File Explorer. Let's go to Components. We will create a new file and call it drinkcard.view. And we'll give it a template tag. And we'll also give it a script tag. And just like before, this is for view 2, so we'll go ahead and delete that. We'll do an export default. We'll give it a name, And we'll set this equal to drink card. And we're going to pass in some props. And we'll pass in drink and set that equal to an object. Then we're going to go back to tab 1 and we're going to find our Ion card, which is right here. And we're going to go ahead and just copy everything in here. I'm going to do Control X to cut it. I'm going to come back to our drink card and we're going to paste this into the template. I'm going to hit Alt-Shift-F. And then what I'm going to do is hit Command F or Control F if you are on a Windows machine. I'm going to search for states.randomCocktail. And all I'm going to do is do this drop down and I'm going to replace it with drink. And I'm going to do replace all and save that. And now we see on our random cocktail page that it's displaying nothing. So if we go back to tab 1 and at the top of the script tag, we're going to import drink card from @/components/drink card. And then we will register it as a component. And we will use it right here. And we will pass in our drink prop, which needs to be binded to, and set that equal to state.randomCocktail. I'm going to go ahead and self-close this and go ahead and save everything. And I'm getting some sort of an error, even though it's displaying behind the error. So once I figure this out, I will be right back. And I've come to find the reason that it did not like that was because I did not have .vue tacked on to the end of this import. Now that we have that, we can go back to our drink.vue up here at the top of the script tag. I'm going to import drink card from @/components/drink card.vue. We'll go ahead and register this as a component down here. And then up in the top, all we're going to do is remove this H1. I'm going to go back to tab 2 and I'm going to go ahead and copy everything inside of this Ion page. We'll go back to drink, we'll paste it in. And in here, we're going to display the title of the drink. So we're going to say state.drink.strDrink. We will go ahead and keep the loader. So we'll keep this Ion content inside of our other Ion content. Let's go ahead and remove this Ion list. And all we're going to do is set this equal to drink card and pass in our drink. And that's going to be equal to state.drink. And we'll go ahead and self-close this and save. So now we can head over to By Ingredients tab. Our ingredients load up. We will go select bourbon and our drinks load up. And then we'll go select this old fashioned. And it's not doing anything, so we must be getting an error. Let me go to my console and see what we have here. And after searching around, there were actually 2 errors. The first was in the export default of drink.vue, I didn't put an S on components. And the second one was that we need to set state.loading equal to false inside of our fetch drink by ID. So once we do that, we can head over to by ingredient. It loads up our ingredients. Let's go ahead and select bourbon. We get our list of drinks, and then if I click on one of these, we see it takes us to our page. Now, one thing we forgot to implement inside of here is the back button for navigation. So let's go up to the top, and inside of our Ion toolbar, we're going to do Ion buttons. And inside of Ion buttons, we're going to do an Ion back button. And then, like I said earlier, we need to import these down here. So we'll do Ion buttons and the Ion back button. And we'll copy these out of here. And we will paste them inside of our components. And since we've lost our navigation because the page keeps reloading, we have to go back to the start. So if we go to buy ingredients, let's just select Absolute Citron, 9.5 weeks. We see we get all of the same things that we get on the random cocktail. We're going to get what glass it's served in, the name, the ingredients, and the instructions. And the back button works on all of these. So we can go through and look at something else. Let's look at cognac, Adam and Eve, and everything's looking really good. So that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for part 2. In part 3, we're going to be looking at this third tab. We're just going to be implementing a drink search so someone could go there and type in something like margarita, and we would display a list of margaritas if we found any. Like I said earlier, there's going to be a part 4 where we're going to do a refactor and fix some bugs and some unoptimized code. So make sure you smash that subscribe button and enable notifications so you're notified when these videos come out. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this video, go ahead and drop a line in the comment section below. And until next time, happy coding.